Academia Letters Language Maps, Andrew Lohrey. In order to understand the world, we should begin to understand the way language works. It is the most abstract context of mind and involves the symbols of discourse, measurement, mathematics, money, as well every sign we use to signify something. However, the main purpose of language is to make and convey meaning. So, two questions arise. How does language work? And what is the meaning of meaning? In the early 1920s, Ogden and Richards produced their influential book, The Meaning of Meaning. Wittgenstein, as well as Ogden and Richards, thought that they could understand meaning by studying language, while Ogden and Richards believed that words corresponded to objects and that language accurately reflected the world. They failed to produce a coherent theory or analysis of the meaning of meaning. Wittgenstein's early view of language, rendered in his Tractatus Logico-Philosophicus, was similar to Ogden and Richards'. However, in his later writing, Wittgenstein changed his position to hold that the meaning of words simply corresponded to their use. This pragmatic conclusion hardly stands as a theory of meaning or of language. Similar kinds of problems arose with the famous 1930s Vienna Circle of logical positivists who emphasized reason and science but failed to add to our understanding of meaning. Most researchers fall into the trap of thinking we can understand meaning by studying language, a trap that even today applies when attempts are made to identify the basic semantic units, semantic primitives, that are necessary to explain how it is possible to translate one language into another. This traditional approach of studying the use of words in order to understand meaning is a case of putting the cart before the horse. Hence the confusion that arose out of the work of a range of European philosophers and linguists who understood meaning to be the byproduct of signs, language, mind, or intentionality. Brentano, Saussure, Peirce, Ogden and Richards, and Wittgenstein. Academia Letters, May 2022, Act 2022, by the author. Open access, distributed under CC by 4.0. Corresponding author, Andrew Lohrey. Andrew Lohrey at gmail.com. In order to understand how language works, we first have to put the horse before the cart. That is, we have to have some appreciation of the conditions of meaning. One author who has greatly influenced my understanding of meaning is the theoretical physicist David Bohm in his book, Wholeness and the Implicate Order, 1983. How was it possible for Bohm, a physicist writing about quantum physics, to have any influence on the metaphysics of meaning? His influence can be put down to the completeness of his research and the coherence of his theory of wholeness. I suggest that for a theory of wholeness to be coherent, even if it is directed at the physical world, it will have to include, in some respects, the central role of meaning in human experience. Bohm's approach to wholeness does this through his theory of the implicate and explicate orders, which rests on the metaphysical conditions of meaning, specifically on the nature of implicit and explicit meaning. In essence, while focusing on the physical world, Bohm's theory of wholeness nevertheless marks out the main contours of meaning to a remarkable degree. As detailed in our paper, Lifting the Veil on Bohm's Hollow Movement, Lohrey and Borham, 2021. Bohm's theory of the implicate and explicate orders argues that the explicate order represents that order of explicit differentials, forms, and objects, the parts of the whole, that move within the physical world of space and time, and which arise through the local mind's processes of perception. In contrast, Bohm's implicate order represents the entire universal context of a singular, whole interconnected system. He and his colleague Basil Hiley represented that unity by calling their later book The Undivided Universe. As Bohm's two orders rest upon the metaphysical conditions of meaning, that is, on the nature of implicit and explicit meaning. And as language use makes and conveys meaning, we can see that these two conditions of meaning must influence language use. How does that happen? Boehm's two orders have the function of enfolding, the implicate order, and unfolding, the explicate order. In terms of the meanings created by language, these two functions, enfolding and unfolding, can be described as the functions of concealing and revealing meaning. Hence, language always operates by simultaneously concealing and revealing meaning, that is, by both enfolding and unfolding meaning. This contradictory yet simultaneous operation arises from the two conditions of meaning, and this occurs through the functions of I, implicit meaning, which operates as hidden contextual or implied meaning, and shar, explicit meaning, which operates as revealed differential relations, forms, and objects. These contradictory functions come into operation whenever we speak, write, or use symbols to communicate. These functions tell us that every expression, message, measurement, computation, symbol, discourse, or text we exchange with others has something explicit that is revealed, while at the same time there will be a large amount of accompanying contextual meaning that remains hidden. What usually remains hidden is the social, linguistic, cultural, academia letters, May 2022, EA 2020, by the author Lohrey. Open access, distributed under CC by 4.0 corresponding author, Andrew Lohrey, Andrew by LTA. Lohrey at gmail.com. In situational contexts, in which the expression is embedded, Lohrey, 1998. For example, look at your text message that says, I'm going to be a couple of minutes late. An explicit statement, but the reason for the message is contextual. As a consequence of this contradictory agency of a language, it becomes impossible to express a concise, clear, logical, and certain statement devoid of ambiguity or uncertainty. In other words, every expression and statement will always be provisional in that it will contain ambiguities and uncertainties. This will also be the case for mathematics, computations, and Aristotelian logic. Therefore, open-ended uncertainty is the inherent reality of all language use. Most readers and writers tend to ignore how language operates by simultaneously reveal yang and concealing meaning. A common attitude has been to treat language as an innocent and neutral mirror-like reflection of the world. Such faith leads directly to the illusion of certainty. Certainty is created by a particular misuse of language, and when we begin to believe in the veracity of a single meaning. Hence, whenever we want to create the illusion of certainty, we can resort to the trick of the single meaning. The ploy of the single meaning can be created easily by a closed or unambiguous statement. Such expressions ask us to implicitly believe in what the English mystical poet William Blake called the sleep of single vision. The sleep of single meaning comes usually from a literal and surface reading or rendering of any text, whether scientific, religious, ethnic, commercial, monetary, or political. The single meaning is the consequence of disregarding how language works. When this happens, we end up being dominated by the very symbols we believe to be innocent reflections of an objective world. To be dominated by the language we use is to be rigid and generally authoritarian in our behavior, but it also means that we will live in the prison house of language, out of tune with the true structure and function of language, in the belief that symbols can be absolute when they are actually relative. This reversal of the order of the meaning will always occur whenever we overvalue and isolate the details of explicit meaning from their implicit contexts. When, for example, the implicit social, linguistic, and cultural contexts of measurement, computation, money, logic, or empirical and formal data are disregarded in favor of hard-edged details or black-letter imperatives. This is also the case in other fields of study when social, linguistic, and cultural contexts are erased from geography, environmental psychology, architecture, or urbanism. It is therefore essential to learn how to leave the prison house of language. How is that done? We cannot leave by simply denying that language always operates by simultaneously hiding and revealing meaning. This is the ploy used by materialists who simply delete any reference to the implicit meaning of social, linguistic, and cultural contexts and are thereby unconsciously caught in their own prison house. Rather, the way to leave is to appreciate that language is the tool of the cartographer. A cartographer is a map maker. We are all cartogra. Academia Letters, May 2022, E2022 by the author. Open access, distributed under CC by 4.8.0 corresponding. Author, Andrew Lohrey, Andrew Bosch 2. Lohrey at Gmail. That's confers whenever we use language because language and symbols are map-making, representational tools. Hence, the symbols of language provide us with maps of and for other territories. The metaphor of language as a map comes from the work of Alfred Korzybski and his book, Science and Sanity, a difficult but rewarding read. Korzybski was fond of saying, "The map is never the territory." Map-making is a metaphor that highlights the important distinction between the secondary maps of language and the primary territory they represent. When language is seen as a map rather than a mirror of reality, this view will suggest that a range of maps are possible and valuable for the same territory, and this can lead to the recognition that language is only ever a derivative, provisional map open to further modifications. There can be many maps of the same territory, and usually the more maps, the more meaning that is revealed. This implies that no single map is ever complete, unconditional, or has an absolute and closed value. Language maps are always works in progress, and even the axiomatic and factual maps of science or the sacred maps of Holy Scripture are maps that are incomplete and open to multiple interpretation. Academia Letters, May 2022, A2022, by the author, Open Access, distributed under CC by 4.8.0 corresponding author, Andrew Lohrey, Andrew Lohrey at Gmail.com. References Bohm, D. 1983, Wholeness and the Implicate Order, London, R. Bohm, D. and D. Hiley, B. Poor, 1995. The Undivided Universe, London, Routledge. Korzybski, A. K. 1948. Science and Sanity, Lakeville, Connecticut. Institute of General Semantics. Lohrey, Opinion, 1998. Critical Literacy, a professional development resource, Melbourne, Langage, Australia. Niente. Lohrey, Opinion, and Borham, B. 2021. Lifting the Veil on Bohm's Hollow Movement, Communicative and Integrative Biology, 14. 1, 221-209, Douai 10. 1080 42, 1889. 2021. 21 157 Ogden, C. K. K. and Richards, I. 1985. The Meaning of Meaning, London, Arc. Wittgenstein, L. Watt. 1922. The Tracticus Logico-Philosophicus. Translated, C. 1. No. Ogden, London, Routledge, and Kegan Paul, Dicey. Academia Letters, May 2022, AT22 by the author. Open access, distributed under CC by 4. 0. Corresponding author, Andrew Lohrey, Andrew Darstoin. Lohrey @gmail.com. Tangi.